All right, book fans, inquisitive folk, teens with a appetite for books. This is our final kind of book recommendation group, little YouTube discussion here about beginning books. And this does not mean that this is for people who've never read a book. Okay, this is just simply these books are easier to read. That's all. That's all it means. You can read some of these books probably in a day, okay? That's kind of why they're beginner. It's not because they're not really good or they're not captivating in some ways. They are, but they're just simpler to read. So many of them are fiction based, and many of them are really simple in the sense of they make a lot of sense right away. You don't have to think too deeply to go to the next page. So that's why we're calling them beginner. So this is not for people who have never read books before. This is easier books, quick read books, and especially helpful for students, especially that are younger, junior high level students. But if you like fiction, any age, it's going to be really, really good for you. So I'm going to introduce to you actually a number of different sets of books. But before I do that, again, I'm going to start with the Catechism. I am a Presbyterian, okay? So because of that, the question and answer in this Catechism is really kind of a distillation. It's a simplification of the confession that we believe, which is a simplification of what we believe the Bible is teaching, okay? So that's what confessions are. They're denominational views on what the Bible is teaching. They're not to take the place of the Bible, but they're saying we believe the Bible is teaching XYZ. And then from that, there are catechisms that are meant for adults and for kids. The shorter catechism, the Westminster Confession of Faith shorter catechism, is just that. So for those of you that have a very kind of linear kind of mind, you want to know answers immediately to your questions about what does the Bible teach about this? The shorter catechism is perfect for you. Now the confession itself, we have that, and I've introduced that in the advanced books of recommendation. But this one is for those of you that just want the quick, simple, kind of the diet version of it. And I'll give you an example. The first, let's actually go to justification, which we read a little bit from, the advanced reading from the original catechism and confession at the very beginning. It says this: what is justification? This is the answer in the shorter catechism. Justification is an act of God's free grace wherein he pardons all of our sin, accepts us as righteous in his sight, only for the righteousness of Christ imputed to us and received by faith alone. Now, that's about a third of the length from the confession, and it's worded a little bit more clearly, okay? So you kind of get the gist. They're very quick question answers, and then it has text proofs from the scriptures where we believe the scriptures are teaching these things. So we call them scriptural proof texts that are in there. So I've got a ton of these at the office. If you want one, come get it. Come let me know. Very helpful for this time to be studying some good books. Okay. All right. The next, I'm gonna share with you some sets of fictional books that are just the classics. Some of them are newer. For sure. Some of them are much more kind of shown to be classics about history, okay? But I think this new group is going to be a classic for Christian fiction as well. So the first one is a two-parter written by Sean Schmucker, okay? And his first book came out called The Day the Angels Fell. And that's about the fall. It's about Genesis 3, basically what transpired from creation to the fall. And it's a fictional account of that. Very good book. Will take you a day or two to read if you're interested in sticking with it. The next one he just came out with last year called The Edge Over There, okay? The Edge of Over There. And this book is talking about losing the tree of life in the garden. So this is the as I said before, the fall out. There's the fall and there's the fall out, okay? And in the fallout, what are we supposed to do? The person in this book, Abra, figures out she's supposed to be searching for the next tree, the tree of life. So that's why it's called The Edge of Over There. And so there's a pursuit of where should I find this kind of idea. So it's a little bit of the fallout story, the rest of the story after Genesis chapter 3. And these books are sets together. They're meant to be kind of, this is a sequel, okay, to the first one, all right? So that's by Sean Schmucker. Have that in the library, okay? The next is actually, there's 4 books in the series, and we've done 2 of them already in our life groups for junior high. But these are perfect books to engage you as younger readers on stories of the Scriptures. The first one is called Hero. And this one is by John T. Alcock, which is a great book on, I think it's on Daniel, if I remember correctly. And this one is really, really good about how God takes a person and sets them kind of as the mediator between God's presence in the midst of a very idolatrous world. So it says when an ordinary person meets an extraordinary God. So that's a really good book. And then this next one, actually that wasn't about Daniel. That's I'm sorry, I got my people mixed up there. This one is on Gideon. My bad. So this one's on Gideon. The book Heroes on Gideon. The second one that I was going to share is on Daniel. This is called Fearless, and a very good book about just like what I said, how Daniel is that person that God uses to mediate his presence and deliver God's people while they're in exile. And you can read, of course, the book of Daniel if you want, or you can read a very much easier book called Fearless to understand the book of Daniel better. So that's the second set of fiction. The third set, it's two different authors, but it's the most well-known. Without a doubt, Clive Staples Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. All 7 of his classic Chronicles of Narnia. You could read them one at a time in a week and get it done in a week. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, definitely the best known. What is my favorite? What is Ross's favorite of this series? Not everyone's favorite. This is my favorite. Boom, man. The Silver Chair. Puddle Glum, anyone? I mean, this one is awesome because it talks a lot about deception. Now, all the Chronicles of Narnia have deception as a theme. Evil is attractive. Evil is deceptive. Evil looks good. That's definitely a theme, both in the Bible and the Chronicles of Narnia. But the Silver Chair, it talks more about evil being bondage. Evil capturing us. And the Bible talks about sin being slavery. You know, John chapter 8 talks about that specifically. The one who sins, the slave to sin, okay? Prince Rilian, in this book, is captured by the green sorceress, the green witch, and it also has a very enticing power over him. And I can relate to that as a human being who has fallen, who sometimes is more familiar with sin and its attractiveness than righteousness and the desire for it. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. But this book is very captivating in the sense of it captures the realness of sin's power in our lives, even as believers sometimes. And we hate to admit that, but the reality is we want to overcome that. And there's that too in this book. So The Silver Chair, and of course there are 7 in that series. And we also have J.R.R. Tolkien, a contemporary of Clive Staples Lewis, the trilogy. If you have not seen the movies, you need to see them. I know they're from the turn of the century, for some of you before you're born. You still need to watch them. I've got the whole set, the extended version. I've got, I think, 5 different versions of the trilogy of the rings. I've got, I think, 5 different versions because they can sell that easily. So Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King. Two Towers is my favorite because of the conflict that you just don't think is going to come out on the side of good. And that's not true in the Scriptures. We know that God overcomes the enemy. But the Bible is always filled with drama. It's not a set of abstract principles. Truth is truth outside of whether we experience it or not, okay? The Bible seems to be teaching that very emphatically, okay? But our experience of it is dramatic. Going from darkness to light. Going from being the bondage of sin to the freedom of grace. That transpiring, that transition is dramatic. Pastor Ricky is always, and Pastor Jonathan, when they do the sacrament of communion, the Lord's table, they don't just say, come up here and get stuff. They demonstrate it for us in a dramatic fashion. They show it to us. They talk to us about what it means, but they also display it for us as a story. And the Bible is like that. That's more of what the Scriptures are really doing, is they're unfolding the drama of God's redemption, okay? That's why I love this book, because it seems like, oh man, the orcs are everywhere. They're going to overtake the tower. But all of a sudden it's like, bam, Gandalf comes on the edge there and overwhelms the forces of evil. But you didn't see it until the very last minute. It feels a lot like the story of Gideon. It feels a lot like the passion of Christ on the cross and the resurrection. There's a lot of similarity there. So you just can't go wrong with this book. The last two I'm going to recommend to you are newer books. One is fiction, one is not. The first one just came out last year, and it is by Marty Mikowski. And this is really, really interesting about the fall. It's called Dragon Seed. A fictional book, but talks a lot about, about the fall and about how kind of the fall happened. So kind of that Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and then the fallout idea again. But very captivating book. And if you want to read something other than C.S. Lewis, boom, really, really good book. I have a copy of it here. And the last one, hopefully this will be helpful for you. Very easy book by Tim Lane called Living Without Worry. And this was a book that was promoted at RYM last summer. I bought a copy. It's excellent. In fact, I probably need to do a study with our kids eventually through this book. But you can come and get it and just read it now if you want. It's a lot. It deals a lot with anxiety, a lot about fear, and this book would be very helpful, I think, for you if you're really struggling with a lot of that right now. So those are our beginner level books. I gave you a bunch of intermediate level books and a bunch of advanced books. All of them have a catechism in there. We want you to know that the Christian faith is reasonable. It's not just a story. There's reasonable arguments for it. There's scriptural proof to back it up. So that's why we have catechisms as suggestions. But it's also a story. It's dramatic. Fiction is great. Fiction is really helpful for us to learn the faith. If it's done in an allegorical way that's true to Scripture, it's really helpful. I mean, C.S. Lewis, he kind of has the marking on it, but so does Tolkien and others that are really writing in those genres today, okay? And then there's also some good non-fiction books like How to Sanctification Work in the Intermediate Level book, and a few others like Living Without Worry by Tim Lane that are helpful for us, okay? So I want to encourage you all, you've got a lot of downtime. Don't just waste it, okay? There's time to play, there's time to have fun. There's also time to study and time to read and time to grow in our understanding of the faith. And these are books that will reward you, okay? They will cost you some time. They will cost you some effort, but they will reward you in the deposit of the faith, and they will help you grow, all right? I didn't start reading a ton until I was in 9th or 10th grade, and then I recognized how much it benefited me, how much I was growing as a Christian, and just growing as a person, learning through literature, good literature. So just want to encourage you to read those. I have all those books in the office. Just text me if you want them, and I will leave them out for you. Come pick them up.